Hi, everyone. I'm Asher Lind, and this is the very first episode of the Dorm Room podcast, or DRP for short. If the name didn't give it away, I am just sitting in my dorm room recording myself for Comger 487. I think that's the class. Going with it. Uh, so yeah, I wasn't clever enough to come up with anything funnier than derp. So before I get into my talking points today, I just want to give a shout out to Wendy Rainey for not only being one of my favorite professors at WSU, but assigning this podcast for us because I love doing stuff like this and I really hope we get to do more of this. So she said we have to make a 6 minute podcast. This is going to be way more than 6 minutes, so don't have to worry about that. We can choose whatever topic we want as long as it's sports related and can keep her entertained. So not sure about the keeping her entertained part, but hopefully we make that happen. My topic is the college football playoffs, and every year for the last, I won't even say for the last few years. I'll say ever since college football playoffs were made, it seems like the top 6, 7, 8 teams are all just right up there. They're just all elite on every side of the ball, and it seems really hard year in year out to pick just 4 teams to get into the playoffs. And every year on Twitter, there's always these debates on and social media in general, these debates about why this team got snubbed or why last year how UCF should have gone in when they won 20 some games in a row. But every year it's just really hard to determine. But I have 5 teams here on a piece of paper. I'll go through them and agree with me or disagree with me, but this is what I have. At number 5, I have Wisconsin, and I really wish they were higher because I've been watching Wisconsin play all year, and they're playing like the best team in the country, in my opinion. They have the number 1 defense. They're giving up 173 yards per game. This is insane to me. The defense has allowed as many touchdowns as they've scored. They've given up 4 touchdowns, but they've also scored 4 touchdowns. Speaking of the number 4, they have 4 shutouts on the year. Jonathan Taylor, their running back, still playing like a Heisman frontrunner, 18 touchdowns on the year, making his case for the best running back in the country. I think he could be the best running back in the country. I don't want to be too definitive on that until we get later into the season, but he's definitely playing like it. A stat that I saw that was just absolutely crazy, and I know Wisconsin hasn't played many good teams up to this point, but hear me out anyway. Against Kent State, Jonathan Taylor had 215 total yards and 4 touchdowns. Just so you know how amazing Jonathan Taylor is. Kent State, the team Kent State, had 124 yards of total offense, 64 yards passing between 2 quarterbacks, and 60 yards rushing. He had 90 more yards than the whole team. Now, granted, that is partially due to the defense just getting him off the field and Jonathan Taylor just getting the ball a lot of times. But when you have a guy like that who can just dominate an entire game like that, I don't see how you don't get into the top 4 along with a defense like that. Like I said, number 1 defense in the country in terms of yards given up. But I think they're out of the top 4 just because of their schedule, and they haven't really played anyone that hard up to this point, but they do go to Ohio State in a few weeks, and the way they're playing, I think they could give Ohio State a run for their money. I think that game will be a shootout. Either way. Both teams have really good offense, both teams have really good defense. I'm just waiting for the Wisconsin Ohio State game. And if Wisconsin does go into the horseshoe and upsets Ohio State, because that would be an upset, I think Wisconsin moves up to 3 at least. All right, getting into the top 4 now. So as of today, or not as of today, I don't know what I'm saying. If the regular season ended today, this is who I have in the playoffs. Number 4, I have Clemson. The reason I have Clemson at 4 is I watched the entirety of their UNC game, and I was honestly shocked. I was rooting for UNC to win that game the entire way, and they were 1 play away from pulling up the upset and beating the then-ranked number 1 team in the country. I wish they were higher because I think Trevor Lawrence is one of the most talented quarterbacks I've seen in a really long time. But he struggled against UNC. What was the score of that game? 21-20? He had a rushing touchdown, and he had a pretty pedestrian game as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know. I just don't see how they can be ranked any higher than that. They still have them in the top four because they just took it to Florida State, but that's not surprising because they've had Florida State's number the last few years. Their schedule's easy the rest of the way. Should be able to go to South Carolina for their last game of the season, beat them just fine. I don't know. I think that's their hardest game because South Carolina just beat Georgia, who, oh my gosh, Georgia. I don't know what happened there, but one more thing I want to say. A lot of people that I've seen on TV and just talking around, a lot of people have said that this Clemson team could be the best team in the history of college football ever since college football was a thing. And looking at the numbers, I don't see how. Right now, Trevor Lawrence has 11 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence had 4 interceptions all of last year. Now, credit where credit's due. Trevor Lawrence is really good. He's improving a little bit from last year too, outside of the interceptions. He has 5 rushing touchdowns this year compared to just 1 last year, and he had 4 touchdowns in the first half against Florida State. So don't get me wrong, I like Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. All in all, I think he's really great, and he's a first-round pick, absolutely. But right now, I just have him at 4. I don't see him going any higher until they can beat some better teams. Their remaining schedule is really easy too because they play in the ACC, not the SEC. That's where I got him right now. Right now at number 3, I have Ohio State, who is just an all-around good football team. Again, as if anyone was surprised. J.K. Dobbins playing some really good football right now, second in the country in rushing yards, sitting at 826, just 1 yard ahead of Jonathan Taylor, sitting at 825 right now. But big thing for me is Dobbins' production is a lot lower than Jonathan Taylor's in terms of finding the end zone. Dobbins only has 8 touchdowns, and Jonathan Taylor has 14 on the year. Still both really good running backs, though. Another big difference, Dobbins, I think, relies more on his defense, just because Jonathan Taylor's able to find the end zone a lot more. And now Ohio State's defense is right up there with Wisconsin's. 4th overall, giving up 8.8 points per game. Haven't played a ton of tough opponents, but still just under 9 points a game is fairly impressive. 2nd in yards allowed at 234 a game. Had a bye this week. Next week they go to Northwestern, who hasn't beaten Ohio State in 15 years, so another win there. It'll be in 2 weeks. I think that's Ohio State's first real game of the year when Wisconsin comes to town. And like I said earlier, I think that game is a shootout because you have 2 really dynamic running backs, 2 really explosive defenses, and I think Ohio State and Wisconsin, whoever wins that game, they're going to win by 7 points or less. It's going to be a really close game. But right now, I have Ohio State at 3, and I think they're just a tad better than Wisconsin. But like I said, every year, top 4, 5, 6 teams, the margin of difference between 2, 3, 4, not far. Number 2, I'm really, really proud of my ranks of this. Right now, I have LSU at 2. And when I was making this ranking, I was watching the LSU Florida game on TV, and at the end of the game, they won by 14 points. And I thought, okay, I asked myself, okay, if LSU beat number 7 Florida by 2 scores, could they be the number 2 team in the country? And I thought to myself, yes, because LSU is playing out of their minds right now. So like I said, was watching the LSU Florida game, and I was coming up with this idea of the ranking. LSU game finishes, they win by 14. I thought, okay, LSU at 2 isn't a totally crazy idea. Go to sleep, wake up the next morning, AP poll comes out. Guess where they have LSU? At number 2. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not totally crazy. I am also not the only one who thinks LSU is playing some of their best football ever right now. Justin Jefferson leads the SEC with 670 yards on the year, 8 touchdowns. They're second in the country with almost 400 passing yards per game, and they're second behind, who else? Washington State. Got to mention the Cougs whenever I can. Season's not that great, but few highlights. LSU second in total yards per game with 561. This is a stat that I thought was just mind-blowing. Against Florida, a good number 7 Florida team, they had 10.6 yards per play. If you can get a first down on every single play of a game and do that against a top 7 team in the country, you should win just about every single football game you play. Joe Burrow, another Heisman contender, 25 touchdowns on the year, tied with Anthony Gordon, Wazoo's quarterback. Go Cougs. He's third in total QBR, second in passing yards, first in completion percentage. If he keeps that up, he will break the all-time record, which I had to look up was Colt McCoy when he played for Texas. He set that back in 2008. So Joe Burrow is really good quarterback, and he's playing at an elite level. And so is the rest of LSU's football team. Ed Orgeron, oh my gosh, Ed Orgeron is just such a funny guy. His personality is just a perfect fit for LSU, I think. He's just super fiery, literally and figuratively, and they're just playing with like their hair's on fire right now. But like I said, number 2, I don't think they can beat Alabama right now, but I do think they can beat everyone else down the line. I think they could go to Oklahoma and beat Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts has a turnover in each of his last 3 games. LSU's defense just loves to capitalize on turnovers. So LSU at 2. My number 1 team right now, probably no surprises, Alabama. I just don't see how you can put anyone above them right now. Tua threw his very first pick of the year last week against A&M. He's first in total QBR, just above 96. His receiving core is probably the best in the country. Devontae Smith is second in the SEC in total yards, or total receiving yards, I should say, 9 touchdowns on the year. Their defense is only given up 17 points per game. Like most of the other teams on here, I guess all the other teams on here, they haven't had many tough opponents. The LSU game in 2 weeks, I think that could be one of the best games of the year. That and the Ohio State-Wisconsin game. That will be Alabama's first actual test, I think. LSU has not beaten Alabama, though, in 8 years. So I'm really rooting for LSU to beat Alabama. I just don't know if it can happen, just because Alabama is just dominant in every aspect of the word. So that's my top 5 college football teams right now. I'm hoping some things will change. I want Wisconsin in there. I want LSU to be number 1 because they're playing like it right now. And I just don't want Alabama to win another championship because it's kind of like the Warriors in basketball. Like they won a few rings. Like I'm really happy for them, but I just want someone else to win, you know? I just don't like it when the same team every single year dominates everyone. So that's the episode right there. Thank you for listening to my very first derp, as it were. Hopefully I can make more of these in the future, and we'll see you next time. Go Cougs.